sleeping in her home beneath the Sicilian sky, when the door came off its hinges and they pulled her from the night. 8 days she was held there, like a debt he meant to keep, like a girl was just a bargain for a man who had no right. When will we stop treating girls like they are property? When will we stop giving predators their remedy? She said no, she said no, she said no. When will we stop? They said to restore the honor, she would have to take his name. The law that should have held him handed her back all the blame. The weapon and the remedy both lived inside one hand, and the girl who held the answer was the last one they'd understand. Her family stood beside her. Her father said the same. We don't owe a predator the wreckage of our shame. When will we stop treating girls like they are property? When will we stop giving predators their remedy? She said no, she said no, she said no. When will we stop? They burned the vineyards, they burned the olive groves, everything her family built turned to ash and smoke. But Franca stood in that courtroom and told them all the same, my body's not your remedy, and I will not wear your shame. When will we stop treating girls like they are property? When will we stop giving predators their remedy? She said no, she said no, she said no, and we will say it too. Franca stood when no one told her she could. Franca stood in a Sicily that never thought she would. And every girl who comes after her walks a little taller for the words she said no.
Live on the air, Trial Junkies United presents Justice After Dark with your host, Z. Oh,
Welcome, everybody. Sleuthy was here first. And we have some of our lovely people like Furqua and Pammy's with us, and Surf Girl. We also have Kathy Mama Bear, Therapist
Drunkie.
Drunkie, Only Fan popped in, Mustang, and Matt's here. It's awesome to see Kristen for Vasquez is here. It Varies. For all of you that came over from It Varies, thank you so much for coming to visit us. and hanging out with us tonight. And also for those that haven't found out, It Varies they have a show. It's Therapist You Know and Dr. Rachel, and it's a game show kind of on crime. And it's before us on Sunday nights, so check them out. It's fun. It's absolutely hilarious. I love going over and hanging out when I can. Welcome, Nicole and Ken. We're so glad you're here. This is going to be a good one, guys. It's a crazy story, but and it we dug deep. So, greetings to my trial junkies, my truth seekers, and my justice warriors. I'm Z, your storyteller in the wilderness of injustice, with my ride or die doc, riding shotgun as we navigate the darkness where the predators hunt and the system fails. We're ready to shine a light on the forgotten stories society prefers to leave buried. So buckle up. The path ahead grows bumpy as we lead you through another section of this nightmare they call the justice system. Doc, you ready to ride?
Well, you said it right, Z. It's a nightmare.
It is. It is a nightmare. Hey, film freak. And if I didn't say hello to my two lovely mods, Katrina and Irish Luna Fairy, hello, girls. Thank you for being here to keep us all on the straight and narrow. Let me fix my earpiece. There we go. It was falling out of my ear. But let's get started, because looking at this, it gets a little crazy, you guys. I just don't even know how I got into this, but I found this story and then I found another article that popped up. So first, let's go with the first story. And this is I'm going to take you all over to Sicily. We're going to Italy tonight. So hop on board. Here we go to Alcamo, Sicily in the 1960s. Alcamo was a traditional, close-knit Sicilian town. It's known for its vineyards, farming, winemaking, and life moved at a slower pace, centered on family, community, and the Catholic Church. Historic churches are over there from the 14th and 17th century with fresco, the fresco paintings, and it's very well known. They have religious festivals and centuries-old traditions, and they're woven into everyday life, while the town's medieval character reflected its long history of Greek, Arab, Norman, and Italian influences. But religion is what really plays a central role in the community over there. Church attendance was common. Religious processions were major social events. Respect for the Catholic teachings helped shape local customs and expectations. Family, honor, tradition, and social reputation highly valued. Women were generally expected to focus on home and family. Their primary roles involved raising children, managing the household, caring for relatives, and supporting their husbands. Many women also helped with farming, vineyards, or, the family business when needed. But the traditional gender roles are strong. The women often had fewer opportunities for higher education, independent careers, or public leadership than men. Although social changes were starting in the late 60s, Alcamo remained largely conservative, with religion and family serving as the foundation of daily life. But now we're going to switch over and we're going to talk about the person we came to speak about. Hey, Semi, thanks for coming, darling. When Franca was 15 years old, her name was Franca Viola. She was engaged to a man named Filippo Meldiano, or Melody. He's 20, and he was 23. She's 15, he's 23. Now, he was the nephew of a mafia member, and he ended up getting himself arrested for theft. And so her father kind of put the kibosh to the wedding and told her, we got to call off the engagement, and she agreed. Now, Filippo moved to Germany after his sentence, so I think it was a short sentence, okay? Because this was in 1963 that they got engaged. But by 1965, Franca, who was 17, had moved on. She was engaged to another man and building a new future. Then Melody returned to Alcamo and he started stalking her. He threatened her father and he threatened her new fiance. And he was trying to force his way back into her life. He wasn't heartbroken. It wasn't like he was terribly upset and he had to win her back. This was just a man that had been replaced and he couldn't accept it. He wanted control. So let's go ahead and explain how he took control, because Franca, this 17-year-old girl, was asleep on December 26 of 1965 in her home when a group of 12 armed men broke through the door. Her mother was there. Her younger brother, Maranio, or I think it's Maranio, he was only 8, was there. Franca's mother gets dragged briefly down the street because she's trying to cling to the getaway car where these 12 men have taken her daughter. Katrina, you're right. She was known for being a beautiful young lady. And then her little brother, who was 8, refused to let his sister go. So he actually got drug along with her, but at the outskirts of town, they dropped him off hours later. But she was gone. The police searched for a week. Eventually, they find her at Meledio's sister's house, where he held her for 8 days. 8 days, and he assaulted her. Yeah, there were 12 men. It was him and 11 of his friends that kidnapped her. And Melodio sexually assaulted her in those 8 days numerous times. Now, when the police did break down the door, he tried to make a last stand. He attempted to drag Franca onto the rooftop to escape, but he failed. And so here's a picture. Isn't he a delight? Now, here's where we're going to pause for a second, and I want you to think. Sicily, 1965. What happened next is considered completely predictable. This is expected. It was normal. Even what everybody thought would happen. It was matriarchal. Well, I can't even say the word now. It was marriage.
Matrimonial.
Matrimonial. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for, Doc. Matrimonial reparto, which is specifically involving restoring a woman's perceived honor after being sexually assaulted during an abduction. Under this custom, a man who sexually assaulted or abducted a woman could restore her honor, her family's honor, by marrying her. For many years, Italian law reflected this tradition by allowing a predator to avoid criminal punishment if he married his victim.
Isn't that just what you'd want to do?
Yeah, and the marriage was accepted.
Yeah.
Everybody assumed Franca would do what women had always done. She would agree to marry Filippo. You know, that's what you did. But few of them really doubted that anyone on the island would ever marry her, because to them, she had been dishonored because she'd been sexually assaulted. Melodio said he asked her to marry him in 1963. And he said she agreed to the kidnapping beforehand as a way to force her parents to let them marry. That was his story. And what he was framing it as is futina, which is a traditional Sicilian elopement or a staged abduction, sometimes used by couples that wanted to force the parental approval of a marriage. In some cases, real kidnappings and sexual assaults were falsely portrayed as futina. And so this was because under Article of 544 of the Italian Penal Code, a man who sexually assaulted a woman could walk completely free, no prison, no conviction, nothing if he married his victim. So this was reparatory marriage, repair marriage. The logic was this: a woman's value was measured by her sexual purity. The sexual assault destroyed her purity. So the only way to restore the family's honor was to marry her to the man who took it. The predator didn't just escape punishment. The law treated him as the solution to the crime he committed. Now, she turned 18 just a few days after she was returned. And thousands of Italian women have been forced into these marriages. Most of them never had a choice. Article 544 of the Italian Penal Code, which equated sexual assault to a crime against public morality rather than personal offense. So their families pressured a lot of these women. Their communities demanded it, and the law made it clean and legal. Refusing meant something worse than prison for women. It meant becoming what they called a donna vergata, a woman without honor, unmarriageable, shamed, outcast, forever. So when the police rescued her on January 2nd of 1966, 7 days before her 18th birthday, everyone in the community, the newspapers, and even the law assumed she would say yes to Melodia. Now I'm going to make sure you heard this. To restore the honor that he violently stole from her, she had to marry him to get it back. The law handed the weapon to the man who used it and then handed him the remedy too.
That is the most absurd joke of a law. I can't believe that they even thought that was a good idea.
Yeah. But Franca, at just 17, getting ready to turn 18, she said no. No to the silence and no to the shame. Her father had asked her, "Do you want to marry him?" She said no to the man who kidnapped her, who held her for 8 days, who believed he was entitled to her because he wanted her and didn't want anyone else to have her. No to the legal system that treated her body as his remedy. Her defiance detonated something. The Sicilian landscape, her community, turned on her and her family. These are neighbors who had known the Violas for generations, and that went cold. And then the arsonists burned their vineyards, their olive groves, their livelihood, destroyed in the night, because this 17-year-old girl stood up and said no. Her father, Bernardo Viola, he could have overruled it because many fathers did. But Melodio's family expected her father to. There's a Sicilian tradition, they call it para. It's the negotiation that takes place between families that's to settle this kind of a situation. And Melodio's family initiated it because they expected Bernardo to sit across the table and work out the terms of a marriage to the predator of his daughter. But instead, Bernardo used the negotiation as a cover. He stalled, and while Melodia's family believed he was coming to the table, he went to the police. Now, he could have pressured her, like I said, but he handled it quietly and put the scandal to rest. That's what fathers do. Instead, he stood beside his daughter, supported her decision to press charges, and then a trial took place in December of 1966. Franca Viola took Filippi to Melodia to trial. She testified publicly about what he had done to her in a culture where sexual assault victims were expected to disappear into silence. But she spoke her truth in open court. Remember, she's 18 at this time, in front of the nation. And I got questions. How many times across history has a woman been handed a marriage license and told it was her only path out of shame? How many times has a sexual predator, been handed a ring and told that it was his path out of a prison sentence? Because this is exactly what Article 544 did. It turned assault into a business transaction. The woman got a husband. The man got to walk. Now, Melodio was convicted and sentenced to 11 years, later reduced on appeal to 10. 5 of the men who participated in the abduction were acquitted, and Franca became the first woman in Italian history to publicly reject reparatory marriage and win it. Now, interestingly, Pope Paul VI acknowledged her courage. The Italian president acknowledged her courage. International media covered this trial from 1966. And yet, despite the verdict, despite the global attention, and despite that Italy was watching, Article 544 remained law. It took 15 more years of women organizing, women refusing, of survivors speaking out. It was not until 1981 that Italy abolished the reparatory marriage exemption for sexual predators. 15 years. And it took 15 more years after that. It was not till 1996, 30 years after Franca walked into that courtroom, that Italy reclassified sexual violence as a crime against a person rather than a crime against public morality. For 3 decades after her trial, Italian law had not treated sexual assault as something done to a woman. It was something that was done to society's sense of decency. The woman was almost incidental in the whole situation. Now, in 1968, Franca married her childhood friend, Giuseppe Rizzi, I think is how you pronounce it. Rizzi? I'm trying real hard with all these Italian names, people. A man who saw not a victim whose honor needed restoring, but a woman of unshakable strength. They built a quiet life together in the same community that had once tried to burn them out. They had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and the family still lives in Alcoma today. And Franca, years later, is in her 70s. She rarely speaks publicly. She has said everything she needed to say in that courtroom in 1966. She was 18 in that courtroom. And here's why I needed you to hear this story tonight. Before we get into anything happening in the United States in 2026. Because Franca Viola's Italy in 1965 and the United States right now have more in common than most people in the US realize. We just call it something different. You might think child marriage only happens in other countries, in places we consider underdeveloped, in cultures we see as backward or ancient. Now sit with that assumption for just a moment, because the data is about to take it completely apart. Hey, an indicted co-conspirator, welcome. Between 2000 and 2021, nearly 1,500 children were legally married in the United States. You heard me. I'm not talking globally. I'm talking just in the US. Yeah, Warren Jeffs is one. Not in some distant century, here in the United States. In the last 2 decades, 86% of those children were girls. Most were 16 or 17. Some were as young as 10 years old. Yeah, 10. Most were wed to adult men who were at least 4 years older than these girls. Not peer relationships, not 2 teenagers making a choice together. This is a child and a man. Now, here's the number that stopped me cold. At least 66,415 of these marriages in the U.S. in the last 20 years occurred at the age or with a spousal age gap that should have been considered a sex crime under the law. Yeah, think about that. Nearly all of those marriages, 90%, handed a would-be child predator a legal escape hatch. Because in state after state, the same act that would send an adult man to prison became perfectly legal the moment he had a marriage license. The other 10%, those marriages were legal, but sex within them was still technically a crime under their own state laws, meaning those states issued a marriage license and then sent a child home to be sexually assaulted. The law did both things simultaneously. They issued the license and then defined what happened inside the marriage as assault. And it gives me a lot of questions. How does a country that calls child marriage a human rights abuse when it happens in Africa or Asia, but they maintain the legal framework that enables it inside its own borders? How does a government that lectures the world about protecting girls write laws that hand sexual predators a marriage license as a get out of jail free card? Because that is what we're talking about. Not some isolated failure, a system, a legal architecture, state by state, that protected predators and trapped children. Didn't that blow your mind, Doc?
Yeah. Yeah. It just goes to show that they try so hard to say that they have a heightened sense of moral awareness, but
Yeah.
it just what they do behind the scenes that nobody sees is appalling.
Exactly. Now, right here, the marriage laws in the United States, they belong to the states, not federally. There's no federal minimum age for marriage, none. Every state sets its own rules, and the patchwork that has resulted in a landscape of loopholes. As of right now, in 2026, only 17 states plus Washington, D.C. have fully banned child marriage, setting the minimum age at 18, no exceptions, 17 states. And anything in red means child marriage is still happening. So if you look at the map and your state's in red, child marriage is still happening. Okay? Now, and that's 17 states out of 50. That means 33 states will permit it in some form. 4 states, California, Mississippi, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, until very recently, and we're going to talk about Oklahoma, set no statutory minimum age for marriage at all. So there isn't even like, this is the age level. That's why we have ones as young as 10. Yeah.
Yeah, Simi makes a good point, because only predators would want to make those kind of laws.
Exactly.
You hit it right on the head right there.
Exactly. And so these that are younger than, because if you look, you can, a lot of the states, the age is supposed to be maybe 15 or 16 with exceptions. That's the key word, because with exceptions, that's with parental consent or a judge's signature. A child of any age could get married, any age. What about the data? Well, the data is not actually complete. So all these stats I'm giving you, there's a lot there that we don't have the information because they're not fulfilling it. And that's what this map shows. It shows the states that do fill out all the data the states that don't, and the states that give some data. So we're going by what we have. So there are legal loopholes too. And the loophole number one, parental consent. In most of these states that still allow child marriage, all it takes is one parent saying yes, not both parents. So you don't have to have the consent of both of your parents. If your parents are divorced and one parent decides, yeah, I'm going to do this, it can happen. And parental consent as survivor after survivor has told us, is often parental coercion. The parent talked them into it, forced them into it. A parent who maybe themselves was a child bride could be, this is the way it is. Like Pammy brought out, Jeff Warren, that they hid it behind religion. Yeah. No, that's, anyone that hides stuff like this behind religion, no, we don't do that. It's not right. Because these are children. Katrina, you're right. And some kids only have one parent. So a parent covering up for an abuser, a parent who might see if a girl has gotten pregnant as a problem that marriage will solve. Loophole 2 is judicial approval. In some states, a judge has to sign off. And these judges are frequently generalist court judges with no specialized training in family violence, coercion, control, or child welfare. Some states, judicial involvement is only required for children under 16, meaning a 17-year-old's marriage gets rubber stamped without a judge even asking if she wants to be there. But the third loophole is the pregnancy exception. Multiple states have written laws that specifically permit marriage below the minimum age when a minor is pregnant or has already given birth. So think about that. Let that land for just a moment, you guys. That could mean you have a 14-year-old that got pregnant, and it could be pregnant from a sexual assault, and a judge is then going to force her to marry her predator. Yeah. She could be 13. And by definition, that would be statutory, the R word of a victim. But the law's response in these states was not to investigate, not to prosecute. It's just to give him a marriage license, often to the man who has impregnated her. Think about that. And here's the piece that connects it all directly to what Franca Viola faced in 1965 Sicily. The loophole 4, the marital exception to statutory R-word laws. In most U.S. states, sex with a child that would otherwise be a felony, R-word, charge, becomes legal inside marriage. Yeah. 19 states have explicit legal exceptions or the defense to the statutory R laws for married couples. The marriage license doesn't just legitimize the relationship, it retroactively erases the crime. Think about that.
Simi raised a good point, issue. That a non-custodial parent could sign a kid off to marry. Do they still got to pay child support? Which becomes a financial issue.
No, they wouldn't, because technically the child becomes emancipated once they're married.
Yeah. Because,
and we'll jump into that a little bit deeper, because they may get emancipated. They don't get treated like an adult, though. So hold on. Let's pin that for just a second.
Okay.
Because that's important. So Italy called it, matrimony reparito. We just call it a marriage license. That's the only difference. And I want to be specific about what it actually means for a child to be married, not in statistics, in rights. And this is where we go into that semi. At 17, you can't vote. At 16, you can't vote. You can't serve on a jury. You can't even open a bank account if you're 15 and married alone. You can't sign a lease. You can't apply for a credit card or enter most contracts, even if you're married, by yourself. You cannot purchase alcohol. Most states, you can't even purchase tobacco, but you could be married. And once you're married as a minor, your legal situation almost becomes a trap with no exits. You cannot independently hire a lawyer. If you decide you want out of the marriage, you can't hire a lawyer. Minors lack the legal capacity to enter a contract, like a retainer agreement. You can't file for a divorce without going through your guardian or representative. Well, who would that be? The person that puts you in this situation. You're treated like a minor. You have to get a guardian ad litem if they will even take you. You can't seek a protective order on your own from the person that you have been married off to. You cannot check yourself even into a domestic violence shelter because most shelters will not accept anyone under 18 without the parent or guardian. Well, who's the one that's probably you're running from in the first place? Yeah, that person that's your guardian. And in fact, if you leave your spouse's home, he can get you classified as a runaway and they will bring you back. Yeah. Think about that. You're running from violence, from a situation you didn't want to be part of, and they drag you back. Your parents no longer have legal custody because you have been emancipated once you're married. But you cannot exercise the rights of an adult either. You are trapped in a legal no man's land. And girls who marry before 19 are also 50% more likely to drop out of high school, 4 times less likely to complete college, more than 30% more likely to live in poverty long term. They face intimate partner violence as nearly 3 times the national average, and marriage before 18 carries a 70 to 80% divorce rate. But for the child inside that marriage, a divorce is nearly impossible to access while she's still a minor. She has to wait till she turns 18 and stay in that abuse. Then she can get herself out. I mean, think about that. That makes you ill. They really are stuck in no man's land. Yeah. But see, it's so much different when you're in this situation and you're married because your husband becomes technically your guardian. So that's the problem. And he's got the control. And let's face it, one of the reasons the relationships end in divorce is because, hey, he's a predator. He's looking for children. Once you age out, he ain't going to stick with you either, unless he can keep you totally under control. But let's put some faces to these numbers. And these are real people. We actually had covered a case not long ago of a young girl from Alabama where it was legal for her parents to give permission, and they let some 60-year-old man marry their daughter. He moved her back to Tennessee where he lived, thank goodness. And people started talking, and the cops ended up arresting him. Sadly, what happened is they sent her back to her parents. Yeah, because she was still a minor. See, even though they sent her off, she was no longer considered an adult. Oh, Nicole, I'm sorry to hear that it happened to your cousin. And let's talk about a few of these other women. Because it really is, these children, they don't have protection just because they're married. Like I said, they're not adults. but they're in an adult situation. And this is Carol. Carol was 14 years old when she was married in Kentucky. Her husband was 20, but he had been grooming her since she was 12, and he was 17. Before she even knew how babies were made, he stalked her, he sexually assaulted her. He got her pregnant and then told her, if you don't marry me, I go to prison and you go into state custody. Neither of us survives this. Carol sobbed openly on her wedding day, but nobody bothered to ask why. Nobody intervened. For the next 5 years, she was sexually assaulted, abused, isolated from going to school, denied basic necessities. She was a child with no legal rights and no exits. When she finally left, she was an adult. She left with 3 children, an 8th grade education, and a diagnosis of severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And what did this 20-year-old man take away from that 14-year-old girl? She has asked publicly. Everything. Think about that. This is Sherry. She was 11 years old when she was married in Florida. Her husband, a deacon in her church, was 20. A 20-year-old marrying an 11-year-old. Yeah, that's not creepy.
Sick stuff.
He had already fathered a child with her, so she had given birth at 10. She remembered going to school in 5th grade and coming home to wash diapers in the bathtub. Over 7 years, she had 6 children. She left when she turned 17. She later divorced, and she spent decades fighting to reform Florida's marriage laws. Her story was eventually read into the Florida Senate record as that state moved to raise its minimum marriage age. Yeah, 11, had baby at 10. This is Ashley Dawn, and she was 15, a freshman in high school when her aunt picked her up from the school bus and told her she was getting married that day. She says, I was wearing pants and a hoodie, not the wedding dress that she'd dreamed of her whole life when she got married she would wear. She went to school as Ashley Tidewell. She came home as Ashley Duncan. Her teachers were confused. Her classmates mocked her. She dropped out, and at 26, she still couldn't afford to file for divorce from the husband that she had been given to at 15. Given to. So see, her parents gave her away. This is Dawn Tyree. Her story is one of a childhood that was stolen by legal loopholes and adult failures. Dawn's story is one of childhood stolen from her at age 11. Her own father and stepmother allowed a 30-year-old man access to her at 11. He groomed her by giving her adult responsibilities to make her feel older. By 13, she was pregnant by him. And instead of him facing criminal consequences, marriage was used as a legal shield that protected him from prosecution while trapping her. She gave birth twice before the age of 15. In and out of consciousness during her first delivery, terrified and in very real physical danger. She describes living in a strange limbo, too young to be accepted by adults around her, but no longer allowed to be a child. At 16, concerned that her children were being put at risk, she actually escaped with her 2 toddlers, but she had no plan. She was turned away from the women's shelter for being a minor, told by a social worker to return to her parents despite she was emancipated from them, and reported as a runaway by her husband, who legally owned her. She ended up homeless and had to temporarily separate from her children to get them housed and fed. She wasn't able to even finalize a divorce until she turned 18. So that means 2 years she was homeless. She raised her children on her own, working jobs like assembling bicycles at Toys R Us to pay rent. Today, she advocates nationally to ban child marriage, testifying before state legislators pushing for federal legislation. She says simply, she's speaking for those who don't have a voice. And that's the facts. Now, I told you there were two things I came across this week. One was Franca Viola's story. This was the other one. And this one I came across that in May of 2026, last month, okay, Oklahoma became the 17th state to finally fully ban child marriage. And that's great. Senate Bill 504. Minimum age now is 18 in Oklahoma, no exceptions. It passed the Senate, but it wasn't by a landslide, and it wasn't by everybody agreeing. It passed by one single vote. 51 to 36. 36 members of the Oklahoma House of Representatives voted against banning child marriage. And that blew my mind. These people put their name on a record in Oklahoma saying they were against banning child marriage. Oklahoma, you need to open up your eyes, people. I'd be checking into these 36 people, find out what's in their closets and what's on their social media. Because they went on the record to allow children to continue being married in that state to predators. And this is some of the things that were said on the floor of the Oklahoma House. One representative asked the bill's author, well, how confident are you that it's always wrong 100% of the time for a 17-year-old to get married? She replied, how confident are you that it's always right? Another representative cited the marriage of people in his family who wed at 16 and 17 and stayed married until they died. Well, good for them. Another actually brought out Mary and Joseph from the Bible. I mean, that's reaching, dude. Are we going to talk about, other things in the past? Henry VIII chopped his wives' heads off when they disagreed with him. Come on, dude. But then another one stood up and said, minors who marry are not legally allowed to seek a divorce. They don't get to stay at a domestic violence shelter. She said she gave birth at 15 and would have had a very different life if her mother had let her marry the person she had chosen in 8th grade. She says, I don't know about all of you, but please think back to who you picked in 8th, 9th, or 10th grade. And I think many of you would be very disappointed to be saddled with that person for the rest of your life. She said, we're going to say that a child can seek a marriage, a lifetime commitment, but they cannot get out of it until they're 18. But we won't allow them to see the doctor on their own because they're a minor. We won't allow them to buy a house because they're a minor. We won't allow them to finance a car because they're a minor. Because we know that they are children. Everybody in the chat, think of who you picked out when you were 14, 15, 16, who you dated in high school, or who you thought was great at that time. Maybe it was a college student that you thought was awesome. Yeah. I wouldn't go back to those days. Lord have mercy, no. Doc Knows the Loser, I thought was kind of cool.
Yep.
And yeah, it wouldn't have gone well. It wouldn't have gone well. And here's another thing that really got to me, because the governor of Oklahoma, this gentleman right here, Governor Kevin Stitt, I guess is his name. It is now. Kevin the Stitt. The bill became law on May 13th of 2026 without his signature. Yeah, you heard me right. Good old Kevin here took the political safest route possible on Senate Bill 504 in Oklahoma. Rather than signing the bill and publicly supporting the effort to end child marriage in Oklahoma or vetoing it and defending his position, he allowed it to become law without his signature. The move enabled the legislation to pass while he could distance himself from a contentious fight with his own party.
Don't they call that
Critics,
like compliant compliant without something, without action or something?
I just say somebody else is holding his balls in their pocketbook.
Well,
It's,
yeah, that's not too far from the truth.
Yeah. And critics argue it demonstrated political caution rather than leadership, especially given the intense opposition from some lawmakers and the bill's significance in ending all remaining child marriage exceptions in the state. So that means a judge cannot sign off saying that a 13-year-old has to marry some older guy because she gets pregnant. There's no exception now. No child marriage. Of course, the bill passed in May, but it's not till November 1st when it actually takes effect, which to me is just wrong. It needs to go into effect immediately. Yeah, Semi, and I agree with you. Children that get emancipated because of issues at home, like you said, that's a whole other thing, and kids have to be very mature to go through that. But this is just totally a different situation where you become emancipated, but not legally on paper like you did, because you get emancipated because you get married. In other words, truthfully, you're not emancipated. You're just turned over to somebody else. Your husband becomes your guardian. And that's just wrong. Now, Oklahoma is now the 17th state to fully protect children from marriage. 33 states still do not. And the questions I have for them is, what exactly were those 36 representatives protecting? Because it wasn't the children. They weren't protecting families. Because the data, every study that I've looked at, every Survivor account I've been reading, all the legal analysis say the same thing. That child marriage destroys children. It ends education. It traps girls in violence. It gives predators a license. What are they protecting was the system, a very old system, the same system that Franca Viola looked in the eye in 1966 and refused to comply with. The same logic that said her body, his solution, her shame, his escape. Her silence is the price of everyone else's peace. Franca said no in a Sicilian courtroom 60 years ago. These 36 people said yes to banning child marriage, to not banning child marriage in Oklahoma last month.
Yeah, I would venture to say that they have, Uncle Billy Bob or something, something's going on to where maybe it's it's in their best financial interests or their political career to make those decisions, but it can't be because it's right,
Yeah. But if they don't have the guts to stand up and say it's not right, don't stand there and say you go on family values.
Mm-hmm.
Don't stand there and say that we're religious and we're hiding behind religion, because no, that doesn't wash. Not when you allow children to be abused. And that's what happens. I'm sure there are some of these marriages that work out. I'm not saying that they all go totally wrong. But what kind of a man is going to marry a 14 or 15-year-old child?
A predator.
A predator. Exactly. And so the difference between what Franca went through and what happened in Oklahoma is a century. It's a time period. Those people were willing to let children continue to be forced into marriage. And the United States actually signed international commitments to end child marriage by 2030. The U.S. State Department calls forced child marriage a human rights abuse. But it's okay here if we just give them a marriage license? The U.S. actively advocates against child marriage in other countries. They point that out, saying, "Ooh, that's wrong." But there's still no federal law banning child marriage in the United States. Now, in August 2024, 3 different senators introduced a Child Marriage Prevention Act of 2024. It would have established a national commission to study and combat child marriage, offer financial incentives to states that banned it, prohibit marriages on federal property where either party was under 18, require both parties to at least be 18 for spousal immigration visas, and directed the Department of Justice to draft a model state statute that other states could use. It was referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it died. There was no hearing. There was no vote. You had 3 sponsors, but the other people wouldn't even co-sponsor. Introduced 3 months before the election that happened. And this is what happened. They just let it disappear. They're not protecting the children. They all say, every one of them, I don't care what party, "Oh, we stand for family." Then why are you not looking out for children? That's all I have to ask. I don't get political on this.
Yep.
I don't care if you're red, purple, blue, or green. You protect the children.
Well, the part of the problem is that people in general, especially when you're talking politics, the vast majority of people don't see the fine line between what's legal and what's ethical.
Yeah.
Because there's just because you're not going to get in trouble legally for something doesn't make it ethical.
Yeah. Well, how many of you have to tell your 14-year-old or 16-year-old to pick up their room?
Yeah.
And you think all of a sudden they're adult enough to have their own home?
Yeah.
And manage it? Mustang, you're right. It's wrong no matter where it happens.
Yeah.
So the children who would have been protected by that bill, they're all still at risk.
Mm-hmm.
The patchwork of state laws was designed to fix this is still in place. I mean, everybody has their own laws. We can have a federal voting age. We can have a federal drinking age, smoking age, even porn age that you can get on a porn site. But yet something as serious as marrying off children. And like I think Semi or someone said earlier, who is it that wants to marry a child anyway? A predator.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something to think about. But let's, like the sign, underage girls are not dating older men. They're being preyed upon and exploited. And that's exactly what's happening. But then right now we have an entire government system that is hiding Epstein files and all sorts of craziness. So are we surprised? No. But we're going to use our voice to speak for the children and put that out there. But let's look at some missing people. And remember, put those cell phones down when you're out and about. Remember the faces. They may leave on their own sometimes. They may be coerced out, and then they can't safely come home. Others never had a choice because we know trafficking is real. Victims pass us every day, and most people never even notice. But trust your instincts. You guys all have good instincts. That person you just passed could be someone's missing family member. If you recognize anyone or something doesn't sit right, make the call to 911. Don't wait. Don't assume someone else is going to do it, or has already done it. If you're not comfortable contacting the police, email us at tips4trialjunkiesunited@gmail.com. We'll make sure it goes where it needs to go. And if you have one that you want us to make sure we share their flyer, go ahead and send it to us or give us the name. Our first person is Anne Marie Larson. She's 15. She's been missing since May 27th of 2026, Gallup, New Mexico. They think she could be traveling toward Crown Point, New Mexico. She's 5'7". She weighs 147 pounds. She has black hair and brown eyes. She was last seen with a black sweater and black pants. Please contact McKinley County Sheriff Metro Dispatch at 505-722-2002 or 505-863-1410. Now, we have to stop and look at what we have in front of us. Anne Marie's possible direction of travel toward Crown Point is significant. This is deep into Navajo Nation. It's approximately 60 miles from Gallup. This is Route 491, US 491 North. And there's actually a huge high risk on this corridor for missing and murdered Indigenous people. So that's important to note. We also have Brittany Starr Wakanda. She's 39. Wakanda. She's 39. She's been missing since May 18th of 2026 from Laguna, New Mexico. She's 5'2". She weighs about 200 pounds and has red auburn hair and brown eyes. She has known ties to Acoma, Pueblo, Grants, Cabrillo, Albuquerque, Denver, El Paso. She may be in a vehicle, a white four-door sedan or older model brown truck. They said there was a fire at her mobile home in Sema Village around midnight on the 19th, and then she disappeared. Laguna Police Captain Kevin Torvino, call him at 505-552-6666. Okay? Then we have another young missing lady named Miley Shorty. She's 17, and she's been missing since May 26 from Gallup, New Mexico, Red Rock Tin Theater. She was at the movie theater. She is 5'3", 115 pounds with brown hair and brown eyes. She does have a birthmark on the back of her head at the hairline. She was in a blue shirt and black sweats. She did contact her family by phone on the 27th saying she's okay. The phone call was trying to be reassuring, but it's also a red flag because trafficking victims, we know, will make these kind of calls. Because when a 17-year-old girl is saying, I'm fine, but she's in the company of a supposed boyfriend whose identity is not known, we need to look at it. And this is why the police, they want to see these children before they take flyers down. And so contact the Gallup PD Metro Dispatch at 505-722-2002 or Gallup Police at 505-863-9365. Now, she has disappeared before, and they're concerned about her. And she was 14 at that time, but she's now 17. And there's also, we got two girls right here. We had Anna Marie Larson, who disappeared on the 26th, and Miley, who disappeared on the 27th, both from Gallup, New Mexico, just a day apart. Makes you wonder, makes you concerned. We also have this little guy. His name is Sky Raven Denew Turner. He's 16, and he disappeared on May 12th of 2026 from Northport, Washington. He's 5'9" and weighs 140 pounds. He has brown eyes and brown hair. He was last seen in Northport, Washington, and may be traveling toward California with an adult male. A 16-year-old with an unknown adult is a red flag. He has an NCMEC number of 2088483 and an NCIC number of M as in Michael 188942601. You can call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children or Stevens County Sheriff at 509-684-2555. Or you can always dial 911 on any of these. Remember that. So Franca, to close up, we're going to focus on something that Frady Reese said. I got a lot of information from an organization called Unchained and a couple of other organizations that had great stuff on, child marriage. And it's really a hole that I ran down. But Frady Reese, the founder of Unchained at last, the organization that's done the most exhaustive research into child marriage in this country, she said child marriage is a human rights abuse hiding in plain sight in the United States. And we don't know the true numbers. The legal system must protect children, not legalize their abuse, not encourage their exploitation. And I want to say something that I think we all need to sit with. Is Franca Viola was 18 years old when she refused. She had been kidnapped. She'd been held for 8 days. Her family's land was burned, but she still said no. She still walked into that courtroom. She still testified. The law didn't protect her. Her community didn't protect her. Her own neighbors punished her for refusing. But she refused anyway. That's courage. That's what it looks like in a system that fails you. Carol refused. Sherry refused. Dawn refused. Ashley. All of these women, these girls, they found their way out of a system that was designed to hold them in place. We owe them more than awareness. We owe them a legal architecture that doesn't require extraordinary bravery just to survive a marriage license. And here's a nice side note. When Mr. Melodia served roughly his 10 years for what he did to Franca Viola, he walked out of prison in 1976. He was banished from Sicily for his mafia ties and ended up in Modena under compulsory residence. 2 years later, in April 1978, he was deceased, killed in a mafia-style execution. The same world that gave him his arrogance to do what he did is what ultimately took him out. Not justice, not a courtroom, but the street. And I can't say I feel bad about that. I mean, the dog that he was, hey, yeah, Pammy, he got his comeuppance. I agree with that one totally. Next week, unless something comes up, because I do have some interviews I'm trying to get, we're going to go deeper on this topic because there's also some ties to trafficking with child marriage and familia trafficking and the forms of exploitation that happens inside the home by people the child trusts and loves. We're going to look at Utah, a state senator that actually rewrote a rape law because he had a family member accused of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old. Yeah. So let's change the law because I want to cover my family. And we're going to look at what Congress is hiding right now because these conversations, it all interconnects. You guys, I fell down the rabbit hole with this one. And you know what? Unless we all talk about these things and give it voice, it just keeps happening. And by standing up and saying, we're going to protect children from predators, we need to chat about it. Because every thread leads back to the same thing, a system that when given a choice between protecting a child and protecting the adults around, historically, they choose the adults. We're not silent. We're never going to be silent about this. Yeah, Semi, I agree. Live by the sword and all that jazz. He thought he was something and he was gone. And Franca went on to live, she's living a good life. She's got a good husband that didn't let the dishonor faze him. They had 3 beautiful children. And I hope people in that village eventually felt shame for what they did. because she didn't deserve that. Her family didn't deserve that.
Yeah,
And kudos.
that just amazes me that people. Well, when you stop and think about it, I mean, there is a thing there. Watch out for stupidity in large numbers. I mean, people,
Men in black.
yeah, 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 yeah. There you go. The person is smart. People, in general, are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals.
He's good with movie quotes. It's one of my favorite movies, but it's true. And and you just wonder if some of those people felt shame because her father backed her and she stood up and they didn't. Maybe it brought them some shame that they couldn't face looking in the mirror. So it was their idea was to, take it out on them because they had the strength to go against the flow.
Mm.
I mean, the fact that the president of Italy and the Pope also commended her, and yet her neighbors acted like that. That just blew my mind. I mean, this girl, she really needed someone. And the fact that this guy thought he could get away with it, but it's happening right now. And that's the sad part. We have cases all the time where adults are going ahead and assaulting these children. And if these girls end up pregnant, their families may be giving them to them for marriage to protect the predator and the family honor. That's got to stop. That has got to stop.
It just makes you want my skin crawl.
I hear you, Doc. I mean, this is the kid that, last week didn't put their socks up off the floor.
Yep.
Or didn't get their homework turned in. And now all of a sudden you're going to say, oh yeah, they're old enough to run a household. Come on. Children should not be having adult responsibilities until they're ready. And even at 18, who's ready to be an adult? I mean, if we want to think about it, if we all look back, we weren't ready. What is it when your parents tell you not?
We thought we were ready.
Oh yeah. What is it when your parents tell you not to grow up too fast and we don't listen?
Yeah.
And then when you get more mature, you go, why didn't I listen? They were right.
Yeah. Yeah. About the start of the teenage years, your parents are dumb as rocks.
Yep.
And then you get into your middle 20s, and they weren't so stupid after all.
Exactly. And a lot of these young ones are coerced. They're groomed into thinking that this is how they want to live. I mean, we have that one case of that one what's that minister's name? What is he from South Carolina that they all think he deleted his wife? But they're trying to say she deleted herself. I mean, a lot of you trial junkies will know, but he was the one that they've tried to get him for harming her, but they haven't been able to. He was a pastor, and she was a child when he started grooming her. And then eventually he married, and he was abusive. So this just you see, it's that same. And when it hides behind religion, Micah Miller, thank you, OnlyFan. I knew one of you guys would remember that case. Yeah, she was a child when he started messing with her, and he was married at the time. I mean, come on. This is what we're talking about. And then families are turning these kids over to the predators. People, if you don't want to be responsible for your children, don't have them. Do not have kids if you're not ready to be an adult and have that responsibility. I mean, that's
Yeah, I'll
basically
stop
what
and
it is.
stop and think about that, though. I mean, if you really stop and consider the facts of the situation, how many children are born because you know um, to people that weren't ready to have a
Yeah.
child, or or are the product of a violent um R word, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's stop and think about how many children there are that are products of that. And
Well, yeah,
that's got to be staggering. I mean,
exactly. Well, I can speak for myself because I'm a child of adoption. I was adopted. I had bio parents that were going to go through a divorce, but they tried to reconcile, but it didn't work out. I was the result, so they decided to put me up for adoption, and I ended up with the most awesome parents on the planet. Now, my mother and I could always talk about it. My father and I couldn't because I was just his kid. That was the end of the discussion. But with my mother, we always talked about how, because normally if someone goes to the length to adopt a child, they really want a child.
mm-hmm.
We do have those cases where people are just predators and creeps, but most adoptions, you want a child. And if you had to go through the process to adopt a child instead of just giving birth naturally, but you had to go through the same process as adoptive parents, having your home checked, having inspections done, there would be a lot less children that are being abandoned, abused, or neglected, because people that have to go through the process, they got to jump through some hoops to get a child, you
Yeah,
know?
unfortunately, you can't really police that too much, because
Yeah.
people would get absolutely irate. But I for one am in favor of do you have a license to breed?
Do you have a license to breed? Yeah, I could see that.
I
I
mean,
Yeah.
really.
Well, sadly, we see in some communities how the government has abused that power
Hmm.
and harmed minorities. Um, and that's a whole nother topic to jump down one of these days. But yeah, it, there are people that you just look at and you're like, no, you should have never been allowed to procreate.
Well,
Just shouldn't have been able to, not allowed. Um, that because children, yes, children do not ask to come into this world. And sometimes the situations, because some of the cases, I know Sleuthy has covered some really difficult child trials, of children that have been harmed. Um, and it breaks your heart.
marriage and
Semi.
parent licenses.
I'm with Semi.
Yep.
I say let's all go with
Yep.
that. Yeah, there should be a legal age,
Yep.
There should be a federal mandate. I mean, really, why can we not have a federal mandated age for consent and for marriage? If you can't vote, and truthfully, if you can't drink alcohol, why on earth are you letting some 16-year-old get married, or 15-year-old? That just does not make sense. I mean, it just really doesn't. Something's got to be done about that.
Unfortunately, the human procreation ability comes way before the brain is
Yeah.
ready for it.
Yes, you're right about that. And I agree. I see Moo in the background.
Yep.
She's in her bed.
Yep.
We have a Moo sighting.
I'm looking forward to next week's
Episode
here.
Yeah. But, if you guys have any ideas of things you want to see, you know me, I don't like to do the most current cases, but if there's some old cases, whatever, let us know. If there's we don't get political. We try and walk a very fine line about calling out injustices we see. Like, this is an injustice.
Mm-hmm.
We will call out when we see that the authorities are not doing what they should, but we're not picking sides. We're not, I'm not going to turn my channel into one of those that all of a sudden everybody's red, blue, purple, green, and yellow. No, we're all part of the human race. We're not dividing up our audience like that. Yes, we got a Moose sighting. Well, Moo's upset because for some reason, Rogue decided to join us and she took Moo's chair. And Rogue is absolutely knocked out right now in Moo's chair, and Moo doesn't know what to do with herself. So, but yeah, so next week, it'll probably be part 2, unless I have that one family that I can get that interview with. Then we'll postpone it a week. But thank you guys for coming. And just remember, if you know something, say something. Whoops, I jumped ahead of my poster here. Sorry. Every killer and predator out there depends on your silence. Please don't give it to them at all. And if you know something or see something, speak up, because it wasn't a mannequin. It never is. And somebody always knows something. And silence is betrayal. That's our motto. That's why we'll never be quiet. So if you have a story you want us to tell, let us know. Thursday, we'll be back with an MMIP case. If you didn't get a chance to watch last week's, where we interviewed Doreen and Ronnie Jack's sister about that missing case, it is a great story. Marie and her daughter, Bridget, were awesome guests. We want to give their family as much publicity as we can. They just want to bring them home. So we try and tell the stories that sometimes get neglected, because every story deserves justice. So until next time, you guys, stay informed, stay compassionate, keep seeking truth, keep demanding justice, never stop speaking up. Say goodnight, Doc.
Good night, Doc.
Yes, thanks to Irish and Semi and Katrina for being here. Our mods. Falla wasn't feeling good tonight, so let's send her our love. There's another song on the end, a new song on the end pertaining to this. So we love you guys. And until next time, remember, the criminals don't stop, neither do we. So keep fighting for justice. And we'll see you on Trial Junkies United presents Justice After Dark. Ciao.
We tell ourselves it happens far away, in some distant land, some other place. But she lives right there on your street, with a ring on her hand and fear on her face. She wasn't old enough to sign her name, wasn't old enough to cast a vote, but someone signed her life away for her and handed him the rope. She should be at the movies with her friends. She should be failing her math test on a Friday. Instead she's running someone else's house before she even got to find her own way. No one asked her. No one asked her. No one ever asked her what she wanted. She had no say. Protect the family name, they said. Keep the shame behind closed doors. So they dressed a child up like a solution and delivered her to him. A judge called it an exception. A parent signed on the dotted line. A predator got a wedding instead of prison, and a child got sentenced for his crime. She was taught that this was love. She was told that this was right. They shaped her into saying yes before she understood the night. still a minor in that court, but she's supposed to run a household for the man who claimed her as his own. She should be at the movies with her friends. She should be failing her math test on a Friday. No. Instead she's running someone else's house before she even got to find her own way. No one asked her. No one asked her. No one ever asked her what she wanted. She had no say. You remind her to pick up her clothes. You remind her to eat her vegetables. You know she is still a child, but you walked her down that aisle. Her body was his solution. Her shame was his escape. Her silence was the price of everyone else's peace. And the people writing laws who refused to make her safe, every single one of them should carry that weight. She should be at the movies with her friends. She should be failing her math test on a Friday. Instead she's running someone else's house before she ever got to find her own way. No one asked her. No one asked her. No one asked her. No one asked her. No one ever asked her what she wanted. We are asking now. We are asking now. We are asking now. We are asking now. We will not stop asking until she has a say. She is not a remedy. She is not a family name. She is not a signature on a line. She is a child and she deserved so much better than what they dressed up as a wedding when it was really a crime.